Now this is something new. A book review on this channel? This is not a signal of a change in the channel, but Ys VIII is a special game for me, and the opportunity was too good to pass up. I was approached by Dragonwell Publishing about getting an advanced reader copy of the upcoming novelization of Ys VIII, and I was more than happy to do so. As a big fan of Ys VIII and an avid reader, I was very interested in giving this a read, and I'm here to let you know how Lacrimosa of Dana is as an adaptation of the game, and as a book overall. If you are someone who has never played Ys VIII, I will give a quick breakdown of the premise of Lacrimosa of Dana. Adol Christian is an experienced adventurer traveling with his faithful friend Dogi aboard the ship the Lombardia. When the ship is destroyed, Adol is cast up on the supposedly cursed Isle of Seiren. Together with his fellow castaways, Adol must brave the island to find a way home. The island holds far more than they could have ever imagined, though, and they must fight back against a ruinous fate along with the help of a mysterious woman with a strong connection to Adol named Dana. Now, before I go into the book itself, I'd like to talk about the author's background and then my own background. Our author for Lacrimosa of Dana is Anna Kaschina, who previously wrote several short stories as well as the Magic Code series, but this is the first of her works that I have read. As for her connection to Ys VIII and her writing of this novelization, I'll let her explain it in her own words with the author's note. Lacrimosa of Dana was my first game in the Ys series, and I instantly fell in love with it. Since that day, I have dreamed of writing a novel based on its story and characters. I am very excited to be able to bring this project to life. Not a dissimilar story from a lot of players, as Ys VIII was and still is a frequent jumping on point to the series for many. Definitely places our author under the promoted fangirl trope, so good for her. As for me, those of you who've watched my channel, or at least my Ys videos, know that I adore Ys VIII. It is my favorite Ys game in the series. I've hyped it up for a long time, bought it for friends to play, and made an entire almost 30-minute long video on just how great Dana is as a character. It's safe to say that I am a fan, and as for reading, I don't talk about it a lot since this is a gaming channel, but I also do quite a bit of reading. Lacrimosa of Dana was in fact the 40th book I read this year. Hooray for round numbers! And I enjoy science fiction and fantasy in particular. Lacrimosa of Dana definitely fits as a fantasy book, so this is right up my alley as well. Going in, I had several questions though about how certain things would be handled, questions that I'm sure plenty of you have as well, and so I'll try to answer some of them here. But once again, I'll turn it over to the author's note, which answers some of those questions straight up. Take it away. This novel is a standalone, self-contained story based directly on the events of the game. I omitted many of the action-based game elements such as beast raids, secondary side quests, treasure chests, and many monster encounters to leave more space for character development that sometimes took me beyond what was shown in the game. Followers of the Ys lore have a common understanding that the games in the series are based on the journals written by our hero Adol Christian. As players, we interpret these stories in our own way. This novel is one interpretation of the events that occurred on the Isle of Seiren, and I hope you enjoy this retelling of the tale. None of the stuff that was cut was a surprise to me. It makes sense not to include every beast raid. Heck, a lot of players would prefer if the game didn't include as many raids. After reading that though, there were still 3 major questions I had beginning the book. Number 1, and most important, how would Adol be handled? For those who don't know, Adol is a mostly silent protagonist. You get occasional short dialogue options in Ys VIII, but otherwise he does not speak. It would be quite the challenge to portray Adol as that quiet in the medium of print, so unsurprisingly in Lacrimosa of Dana, Adol is a fully speaking character. He may not be the most verbose one, but he talks, and frequently in multiple sentences. The second question I had was how would the book handle point of view in characters? Unsurprisingly, most of the book takes place from the perspectives of either Adol or Dana. However, there is one other point of view character for the book, and that would be Laxia. I'll get into more of how this worked in the main review, but that meant we had 3 point of view characters during this adventure. Lastly, how faithful an adaptation would this book be to the events of the game? The answer is very faithful. There is no major event of the game that is not included in this book. As the author note said, there were even some moments that she took beyond what was shown in the games, but everything from beginning to end occurs in the game and book. Hopefully, that clears up a good number of the questions before we dive into the biggest one of all, and the main subject of the video, is Lacrimosa of Dana good? As a standalone book, I am somewhat hesitant to say Lacrimosa of Dana is good, as in, I'm not sure someone who is not an Ys fan will pick up this book and enjoy the adventure due mainly to one feature of the story in written form. It is clear the author wanted to include all of the important events of Ys VIII into the book, which I think overall was a good thing. As a result of this though, the book moves at a rapid pace. I personally would have loved if we'd taken more time for longer action sequences to get a sense of how each character fights, landscape descriptions to show how gorgeous and otherworldly the island is at times, descriptions to make up for the loss of the visual component. There is still some of that there, but it doesn't feel as complete as books I've read that take the time to set up world building, setting, and action scenes. Now, I completely understand the choice. Lacrimosa of Dana is over 450 pages long while moving at that fast pace. A book that would fulfill my stated desires might be pushing 700 plus pages. Certainly, I would be fine with that. I'm more than happy reading very long, very detailed books, but most readers won't be. Due to that trade-off, though, I am hesitant to recommend this book to readers who have never played the game. Certainly, it's still a well-told story with lovable characters, but I think the world would feel bare, and at times it would feel like, and then they did this, and then they did this, and then they said this. I would love to hear a new reader's thoughts on this, though, so if you are one and you read the book, please let me know in the comments. As for our returning Ys fans, I already noted the book's loyalty to the plot of the game, and I do regard that as a positive. Sure, the game has its story issues, but there's a reason Ys VIII has stuck in the minds of players for many years since. Trying to alter or change the story would have made little sense. Next on our positive list is Adol's characterization. Due to the aforementioned silent protagonist depiction in the game, the most new content in the book comes from bringing Adol into the conversation, and he feels like the Adol I imagine. The adventurer who thrives on discovery, stands bold in the face of danger, is sensitive to the needs of others, and is quick to bond with people regardless of station or background. That is the Adol I know, and that's the Adol that appears in the book. One of the neat bits that I confirmed by going back to the game is that some of the dialogue sections are built off of the dialogue options you get in the game. They're usually expanded upon, so it's not just a single word or sentence response, but that's an attention to detail that I quite enjoyed. Likewise, pretty much all the other important characters feel the same way as they did in the game, although their dialogue is mostly just built off the game, so that makes the task easier. I think including Laxia as a POV character benefited the story in general. Especially in the early part, it gives a unique perspective of how Castaway Village is growing, as well as highlighting things that Laxia would see that Adol wouldn't. After Adol, I think Laxia is the character the author had the most understanding and connection to among the cast. The best part of the book for me, though, were the character-focused scenes. These scenes are absolutely enhanced by our window into the characters' thoughts and feelings that we, of course, lacked in the game. Some of the time it was obvious what characters were thinking in the game, but there were several occasions where Kashina's writing opened up a new window of understanding into particular scenes and characters. I liked how she explained Laxia's thought process in the early chapters when she presents more standoffish, and how she warms up to Adol and her role in the group. We are also privy to more details of how Dana feels while performing her duties and her relationships with the various people of Eternia. I was a big fan of the book taking advantage of the unique aspects of the print-based medium versus a visual medium to give us a glimpse into the minds of the characters. This insight is exactly what I was hoping to see, because I think that's where fans of the game would get the most out of the book. Also, when the book has the time to slow down and describe particular settings or action scenes, I think the author displays plenty of talent in constructing those scenes. I would be interested at some point to look at her previous work to see how it differs from Lacrimosa of Dana in this particular area, since action and setting is where the most cuts were made. There are more scenes like that early on, and then it peters out as we go along before jumping back in with the series of action scenes leading to the conclusion. Again, if given more pages, I think the book would feel richer and fuller, but that's just my opinion, and I'm sure Falcom wasn't looking for a doorstopper when they made the novelization deal. There's my positive thoughts. Good adaptation, strong character identity, wonderful insight into characters' thought processes, and competent if infrequent setting scenes. Let's get into then what I think the book's weaknesses are. First off is an odd integration of a game mechanic into the book. For those who played the game, you'll remember that there are landmarks that are dotted around the map that you can find and get a nice scene around and can then fast travel to later on. The way those are brought up in the book is by having characters encounter the location and then debate about what to name it before settling on the name given in-game. I don't understand why this was necessary. It took me out of the reading and world and felt so unnatural. It would have been better if the location was just described and then those who played the game could go, oh yeah, that must be the White Sand Beach, and non-players could be treated to a cool description of a wondrous landmark. Instead, it's Sahad naming it while Laxia critiques the name. Now, this is a problem only early on, as this was dropped for the second half of the book, which kind of made it even more inexplicable. I definitely did not miss its absence, although I did amuse myself thinking how the author would have tried to justify the characters naming a particularly infamous location in the original localization. My second problem comes with the action scenes. Quite a few of the fights are resolved in a single paragraph. Especially Donna's earlier action scenes, it makes none of the threats in the book feel real. None of the fights feel challenging. Perhaps the biggest battle in the entire game gets 3 pages, and that's it. I mentioned how I understand that structurally a good amount of the action had to be cut. I think too much was, and thus the stakes for the party felt non-existent. For being trapped on a deserted, possibly cursed island, the danger never seemed to be all that important when it could be resolved in a single page. Now I recognize that all criticism is subjective, and my last couple points were not anywhere near objective, but my next one is inarguably subjective. It starts with the added content and scenes. Not the inner thoughts that I mentioned earlier, but things like an entirely new scene added of Donna in weapon training. I love the idea. I think the book benefits from some of these scenes. The aforementioned Donna scene is a perfect inclusion and I think builds the world. There are, however, additions that I don't think fit well, and most of them involve the romance. I'm not the biggest romance fan. I love love, and I do not love how a lot of media portrays love. To give context, I asked my friend, who I frequently talk about books with, to describe my attitude towards romance in books, and to quote her, I'd say you have a low tolerance in general, and you're not especially captivated by romance in young adult because you see a lot of the flaws and it's difficult to look past them. Therefore, my words should certainly be taken with several grains of salt, and I don't even dislike the romance in Lacrimosa of Donna for the most part. When those scenes arose and I felt the instinctive, I don't like this response, I did say, this is just the author's interpretation and I don't have to agree. That was a smart inclusion in the author's note, and I do agree with it. Not everyone agrees with my interpretations of media, and if they can engage with my opinions in good faith anyways, then I can do the same for them. Without going into specific spoilers, there are 3 romances I identify in this book, 2 of which I think are at least somewhat supported by the text of the game and don't feel out of place. The third one, though, is completely out of left field, ignores several of the in-game text moments indicating different feelings from these characters, and didn't sit right with me. I don't think it's poorly written. If this wasn't a novelization of a game that I've played, I don't think it would have raised an eyebrow, but this is the biggest deviation from the source material, and I don't think it was one that made any sense to include. Now, hearing this, you may think that this added content dominates the book. It doesn't. Again, this is a very faithful retelling of the story of Adelcriston, Donna Eclusia, and the castaways on the Isle of Seiren. I do tend to hyper-focus on the differences because I'm so familiar with the original story, but the book is still that story. Just a new interpretation with a few extra details. Speaking of extra details, there are quite a few scattered around the book, from the gorgeous cover coming from the game's art to various drawings and borders in the book designed after the Eternian art style. My favorite, though, was how they handled signaling that a new character was taking over the POV. Before the first sentence, after the switch, the book shows their sword, so you can see who is the POV character just by the sword. I absolutely loved this. This is the kind of detail that only a fan would include in the book, and I am all here for it. Is the book good then? I say I got enjoyment out of the book, and I think any Ys VIII fan will as well. I love the glimpses into the inner lives of the characters, the experience of diving back into this world and journeying with the characters that I love, and another chance to ponder that ending, which I think the author does a great job with. On the other hand, the deviations from the game's story were a mixed bag for me, especially the one out-of-place romance, and I feel the pared-down action wasn't for me, but I still got a lot from the experience of reading the book. New readers, I recommend checking out the word of someone who hasn't played the game and has read the book before giving it a try, but if you like the sound of the story or enjoy this author's work, then I think you'll have a good time. As for Ys VIII fans, I give this book good recommendation, at the very least so we can discuss some of the spoilery details in depth. For those interested, the book is coming out October 10th, tomorrow if you're watching this on upload day, in hardcover, paperback, and ebook form. I'm very eager to hear from my fellow Ys fans about how they enjoy this book, and I wouldn't be opposed to seeing other novelizations in the future. A book on Ys 1 and 2, maybe? I can dare to dream at this point. If you enjoyed this unusual but hopefully enjoyable video, please show your appreciation by hitting the like button, commenting, sharing around, and, of course, subscribing. I can't guarantee you're going to get more videos like this from me, unless video game novelization becomes a trend, but I do cover a lot of story-rich games and RPGs. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and happy reading!